lost characters. From TV shows, video games, and movies, they range from obscure to where the hell did they go? I used to see them everywhere. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Scrappy Doo. I know you suck, but where did you go? That's where I, ZEEP, come in. The master of finding forgotten characters. Be sure to get this to 5,000 likes if you want a sequel to this video, because there's just way too many lost characters to list. Anyways, let's talk about the worst, and even the best, characters that have become forgotten. But first, a word from our sponsor, FlexiSpot. Why do you need a standing desk? Well, not only does it reduce health risks, such as reducing back and neck pain, it is also shown to increase your energy and activity. That's where FlexiSpot comes in. FlexiSpot provides all kinds of standing desks to meet your demands. If you want a premium standing desk for daily use, you can check their E7 and E7 Pro C frames. If you're on a limited budget, you can choose their E5 model. These desks are firm. You could lay on the table, and don't worry, they are secure. It's so easy to assemble, and you can unlock more savings on the desk by using the exclusive promo code provided in the description. Click the FlexiSpot link to enjoy these fantastic discounts. Don't miss the FlexiSpot Presidents Day flash sale. Use my exclusive code, ZEEP, for an extra $30 off on the E7 and E7 Pro desks. For the new arrival of the E7 Plus, use the code ZEEP for an extra $50 off. Trust me, it's a rare treat. Don't miss out on designing your dream setup with FlexiSpot. Scrappy Doo. Scooby-Doo has always remained a weird property to me. I mean, the original series was definitely a product of its time. Scooby-Doo followed the adventures of 4 young adults by the names of Shaggy, Velma, Daphne, and Fred. Not to mention, of course, Scooby-Doo. Growing up, I did watch a couple episodes of the original series, and personally, I always thought it was okay, because it never compared to one of its successors. What's New Scooby-Doo? Basically the 2000s rendition of Scooby-Doo, accompanied by a kick-ass theme song, and humor that fits more with the times rather than the 1960s. Now, this wasn't the only Scooby-Doo property I enjoyed. They had multiple movies, in fact one of them where they had zombies which were actually creepy, but nothing, and I mean nothing, ever compared to the Scooby-Doo live-action movies. Written by James Gunn, these movies had a lot of character and heart, and it almost seems as if these movies are a parody of the Scooby-Doo concept, but in a good way. By the end of the first movie, however, there's a big twist. The giant robot that's trying to kill the gang turns out to be the estranged nephew of Scooby-Doo, Scrappy Doo. The butt of the joke for the entire Scooby-Doo universe.
Scrappy Doo.
Correction! The new improved Scrappy!
Let's go back here, as I just opened a huge can of worms. Okay, so Scrappy Doo was first introduced in 1979, and he was only made because ABC was threatening to cancel the Scooby-Doo series due to low ratings. But in terms of the inception of Scrappy Doo, ideas of him existed ever since the show began, as the creators initially wanted a feisty little dog to join the crew. The creators had 2 ideas for a dog to join the gang. One who was a big cowardly dog, and another one who always wanted to fight, even though he was super tiny. The creators ended up going with the idea of the cowardly dog, and for the next 10 years, things were fine, up until they weren't. With the ratings being so low, they decided to go back on the small dog idea in the hopes that it would save the show and reignite interest again. However, in an ironic twist of fate, Scrappy Doo was able to reignite interest again on the show, except it was this morbid interest. People did come back. They wanted to know what the Scrappy Doo was all about. He was a pretty strong character as well. I mean, look at this clip. He basically kills someone.
Like I wish someone would take that lava monster and drop him back in the volcano he came from!
Huh? Well, why didn't you guys say so in the first place?
Scrappy looks up to Scooby, believing Scooby is this big and strong character, when in reality, Scooby is cowardly. Scrappy believes that Scooby being cowardly is all a ploy, some master plan to get a leg over the villain they may be facing that week. The problem was, when Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo were together, Fred, Daphne, and Velma began to be phased out when it came to the general plot of the episodes. Scrappy-Doo had a high-pitched voice and had a catchphrase. He would constantly say puppy power and would always be around. Ah, you want some Shaggy action? Nah, it's too late. You're getting Scrappy Doo and you're gonna like it. To many, he was a very one-dimensional character who was annoying and only had 2 recognizable character traits. He was tiny, and he was strong. See, I don't think that's exactly fair, because in my research, they did try to flesh him out during the 1980s, even giving him a backstory of how Shaggy and Scooby were both there when he was born, growing to love Scooby since a very young age, trying to live up to him. You see, the creators thought he would be cute and endearing to many. But no, people saw it for what it was, a last-minute attempt to remain relevant. See, my trouble here is I thought Scrappy was cute looking back. He cared about Scooby, he cared about the gang, it's just he was poorly written. There were good traits in there, and he did have funny moments. It's just people got tired of seeing him over and over again and started to miss the old adventures with Velma, Daphne, and Fred. But here's the thing, he worked. ABC decided not to cancel Scooby-Doo as it headed into the 1980s. Ratings did improve for the show. People came back and were like, oh well, the Scooby-Doo I loved sucks now. Might as well complain to ABC and say, hey, remove Scrappy-Doo so I could continue watching the show. People were interested in Scooby-Doo again. Scrappy-Doo even stuck around for much of the 1980s. I mean, the kids liked him. By the end of the 1980s, Scrappy-Doo had run his course. He did his job. He made people pissed off and ruffled some feathers. I mean, how could he not just look at him? Warner Brothers thought it was time to dispose of Scrappy-Doo. In fact, by 1988, a new Scooby-Doo show titled A Pup Named Scooby-Doo released as some sort of origin story for the Mystery Gang. So if it serves as an origin story, then it would make sense if Scrappy-Doo, who's younger, would not be in it, right? Well, this was more of a covert operation to remove Scrappy-Doo without even acknowledging it. It would make sense he wouldn't be in the prequel, right? He's not born yet. In 1991, A Pup Named Scooby-Doo ended its run. Throughout the entire decade, Scooby-Doo wouldn't have TV shows, but rather multiple movies that ranged from good to, it was okay. Scooby-Doo Cyber Chase is like one of the greatest movies ever made. That being said, it did bother me that Scrappy-Doo didn't appear in any one of these movies. He would appear in the comics throughout the 1990s, but who was reading those? We're talking about the Scooby-Doo TV shows and movies here. This is serious stuff. In 2002, the as before mentioned What's New Scooby-Doo premiered. Throughout the entirety of the show's run, Scrappy-Doo is not mentioned once. Oh no, but if you want some Scrappy-Doo action, you simply just need to watch the movie that completely destroys him and labels him as a murderous maniac.
Because I, Scrappy Dappy Doo, have absorbed enough energy to rule the world with my all-powerful army! And I've brought you here, puny, pathetic Mystery Inc. To witness my moment of triumph. All I need to complete my transformation is Scooby-Doo!
James Gunn would later state that he was just making a joke and was trying to be funny, but some fans of Scrappy-Doo got actually mad about this. Hell, even in the early 2000s, Cartoon Network knew that Scrappy-Doo was being mistreated, even making this bumper ad in where he feels betrayed from the studios that made him.
Oh,
Scram, what? Oh, sorry, Scrappy.
no problem. My fault. Eustace.
Scrap.
Oh, do you work here?
Scrappy! Yeah, for a while now. I've been busting my hump at this network for years! I mean, who do you think's been keeping the cartoon mystery fresh all this time? But do I get the same treatment as them? Not even close! Can I help you?
Oh, easy there, Scooby.
My name is Scrappy! And I've been here longer than all of you! Longer than you, and you!
Oh, mama.
The problem as I see it is too many cartoons! They're the kings and queens of this network, and they know it! I put in the hours, the late nights. Where's my key to the castle?
You are here today, Scrappy?
You are a genius! How'd you figure that out?
Cartoon Network, the best place for cartoons.
Not for me! Not for me, man!
To add insult to injury, in the 2010s a new Scooby-Doo incarnation came out, titled Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated, and where they do mention Scrappy-Doo, but in the most insulting manner possible.
Wow, I haven't seen...
Look away, Daphne. We all promised each other that we would never speak of him. Not ever.
Scrappy-Doo's reputation is one of abandonment. I'm surprised I haven't talked about him before. During the 2010s, a Scooby-Doo comic titled Scooby Apocalypse came out, which takes place in the Scooby-Doo universe, but if there was an apocalypse going on, yeah, you hear that right. Scrappy-Doo begins as a villain, seeking vengeance onto those who abandoned him. Scrappy's last speaking animated appearance in a Scooby-Doo property was in the Scooby-Doo Project, a parody of the Blair Witch Project. and where Scrappy goes into the woods and gets lost, never to be seen again. Maybe one day, Scrappy will appear with a speaking role again in an animated series, but for now, he is abandoned. You know, in South Park, we've had a lot of characters come and go. It only makes sense, the show has been going on for 300 episodes. Throughout the show, there have been many characters who aren't exactly good people. But as for one of the few friendly faces who remained reliable to the boys, that honor had originally went to Chef. Chef worked at the cafeteria at the boys' school, being depicted as smarter compared to the other adults who reside in the town. The boys would often go to Chef whenever they were seeking advice, and was basically the only adult the boys could trust. Chef is well-meaning. He gives honest advice to the boys, which at oftentimes isn't appropriate towards them. It would be often that even sometimes Chef would have his own songs that would be funky, at times selling his salty balls, which would basically be his trademark from the show.
I call them Chef's Salted Chocolate Balls. Say everybody haven't seen my balls, they're big and salty and brown. If you ever need a quick pick-me-up, just stick my balls in your mouth.
Chef was actually inspired by two different people. The first being an actual cafeteria worker Trey Parker came across while he was attending the University of Colorado. The second was musician Isaac Hayes, who was actually the voice actor for Chef. Hayes was famous for Southern Soul. In fact, he even wrote the theme song for a famous motion picture in the 70s known as Shaft. He was talented, and Matt and Trey loved working with him. He was able to win Oscars, Grammy Awards. He was a viable voice actor when it came to the show. Chef was more of an icon of the earlier seasons of the show. As the series headed into the mid-2000s, and as they kept tackling controversial issues, this would begin to anger multiple parties, angering Isaac Hayes himself. In November of 2005, South Park released the episode Trapped in the Closet. The episode lampooned Scientology and Tom Cruise, telling the story of how the church was founded and how the world was founded as well.
Usually to hear the secret doctrine, you have to be in the church for several years, Stan. Are you ready to hear the truth?
I guess.
It all began 75 million years ago. Back then, there was a galactic federation of planets, which was ruled over by the evil Lord Xenu.
I think the funniest part about this episode is that it has the text, "This is what Scientologists actually believe," on the screen, because without it, most people would think that Matt and Trey were making this up. Of course, in reaction to this episode, Scientologists were incredibly upset. There were reports claiming that Tom Cruise threatened to back out of his promotional obligations for Paramount Pictures for one of the new Mission Impossible movies if they allowed the episode to repeat an airing. Tom Cruise would later deny this claim. However, this episode also angered somebody else, someone way more important, Isaac Hayes. At the beginning of 2006, Hayes would come out and state that although he was not pleased with Matt and Trey's depiction of Scientology, he understood that they were joking and would try to let bygones be bygones. However, by March of 2006, nearly 2 months after he suffered a stroke, it was reported that Hayes was going to quit South Park over objections from the Scientology episode. Hayes would state this: "There's a place in this world for satire, but there is a time when satire ends, and intolerance and bigotry towards religious beliefs of others begins." Matt and Trey grew upset. They stated this: "We never heard a peep of Isaac in any way until we lampooned Scientology. He wants a different standard for religions other than his own, and to me, that is where the intolerance and bigotry begins." Hayes' son would come out and state that because his dad was still suffering from effects of his stroke, he was not in a rational position to make a decision to leave the show. Other reports claim that he was under intense pressure by the Church of Scientology to leave the show, which is why he didn't leave immediately after the episode premiered, and why it took a couple months. I mean, the episode was nominated for an Emmy. It received a lot of buzz. A lot of eyes were looking towards the Church of Scientology, and it wasn't good. In fact, the press release announcing his departure from the show was apparently put out by someone else that wasn't him. After Isaac Hayes left the show, an episode came out titled The Return of Chef, and where Chef makes his final appearance. The entire episode is a commentary on what happened. Matt and Trey are depicted as the boys, while Isaac Hayes is depicted as Chef. In the episode, it is revealed that Chef had left South Park to join a group called the Super Adventure Club. It is revealed that the Super Adventure Club is a headquarters of men who are child molesters. The club had brainwashed Chef, who throughout the episode is trying to make advances towards the boys. The boys are able to revert Chef back to his normal form until the Super Adventure Club finds out about this, and they come back to try and revert him to do evil deeds again. The final act has the boys pleading with Chef not to be brainwashed.
Don't forget all your training, Chef. Stay with us and your life will be grand and eternal!
Chef, we love you.
Unfortunately, while the boys are on the bridge trying to convince Chef, lightning strikes the bridge, leading to Chef to fall to his doom. The Super Adventure Club represents the Church of Scientology, brainwashing Isaac Hayes. By the end of the episode, the Super Adventure Club resurrects Chef as Darth Chef, referencing the Star Wars movies. Parker and Stone would continue to ridicule the Church of Scientology, stating that if a statement by Hayes was never made, they would have stopped lampooning the religion. Everything that came afterwards was seen as spite of a religion that took away their friend. On August 10th, 2008, Isaac Hayes passed away in what would be deemed as a reoccurrence of a stroke. In the first episode that premiered after his death, the creators dedicated an episode towards him, suggesting that whatever happened between them was all in the past. In 2014, Chef would make one more appearance in the video game South Park: The Stick of Truth, but as a zombie. Although he's a zombie, he has moments of consciousness, stating, "I'm sorry, boys."
I'm sorry, boys.
Oh, you don't have to apologize, Chef. It's the goo that's doing it.
The truth is, Chef is a character who will never come back, ever. His place in South Park history is iconic, but it could never be revised. It's best to leave the memory of the actor who played him, and the character as well, by stating that he cared about the boys, and about giving everyone a good laugh. Rest in peace, Isaac Hayes.
We're actually going to kill off one of the Griffin family.
Vincent Griffin. I still remember the day. It was November 24th, 2013. It was my freshman year of high school. I'd grown accustomed to every Sunday, and where I would just sit on the couch and watch the Animation Domination block on the channel Fox. I was used to seeing Brian Griffin week by week, episode by episode, on the amazing show known as Family Guy. While Stewie and Brian are playing a game of street hockey, the worst happens. Brian is hit by a car. The family gathers together, hurdles over, shocked at what had just happened. Their beloved dog gone. In the immediate aftermath, Stewie blames himself. You see, Stewie would simply just use his time machine to try and go back and save Brian, but unfortunately, Stewie had destroyed the time machine out of fear of affecting history. Now, of course, Stewie would have simply just made a new time machine to try and go back, right? Well, his supplier of the parts to make the time machine was killed, so Stewie is out of luck. In reaction to Brian's death, Peter and Lois buy another dog. Another talking dog who's Italian by the name of Vinny.
Hey, you, green pants. I hear you're looking for a dog or something.
Oh, finally, someone who sounds like they went to college.
Vinny was voiced by the actor Tony Sirico, famous for his role on The Sopranos. Vinny is nothing like Brian. Vinny goes out drinking with Peter and the buddies, and he immediately hits it off. The rest of the family seems to like him as well, except Stewie. Vinny is sympathetic towards Stewie, understanding that it's hard to mourn after such a traumatic loss, as Vinny himself had just lost his own owner as well.
Do you want to know what's the matter? You're the matter. Everyone in this family is so damn thrilled with you, they've forgotten all about Brian. Well, I'm not thrilled. I'll never forget Brian. He was my best friend. You're not supposed to lose your best friend at my age. You're not supposed to lose him ever.
Look, Stewie, I know it doesn't seem like it now, but you're gonna be okay. You know, before you guys found me in the shop, I lived with an old man named Leo. It was just him and me in a tiny apartment, and we got pretty tight. It kind of became my whole world. By the time he passed away, it was real tough.
Later at the mall, when Stewie is asked what he wants for Christmas, he breaks down and states that he wants Brian back.
It's our first Christmas without him, and no one's even mentioned his name. I don't care about this stupid carnival or Christmas. I don't care about anything except Brian. I want Brian!
Although Vinny is really a great dog, he understands that he's not Brian. He decides to help Stewie. Eventually, Stewie discovers his past self from a previous cutaway gag who still has the time machine. Vinny decides to take the time machine and bring it back towards the present Stewie. However, Stewie discovers that if he goes back in time and changes Brian's fate, they'll never be able to obtain Vinny. Vinny accepts that they'll never meet, as the past is going to be changed, and decides to sacrifice that in order to make Stewie happy.
If I save Brian, my family won't get another dog, which means we will never have met. I'll probably never see you again.
Oh.
So, I think this is goodbye.
Hey, I'm man's best friend, not some stupid baby's best friend, right?
Good dog, Vinny. Good dog.
Stewie goes back in time, he jumps in to save Brian, and thus, Brian is returned back to the show. In the immediate aftermath of Brian dying, there was big uproar among fans alike. Vinny was absolutely hated on, despite the fact that he wasn't really a bad character. He was someone who was meant to be there temporarily, to try and keep fans on their toes. I know, it's silly to say, but I've never watched Sopranos, so I don't really know Tony Sergio from that. I only know him from Family Guy, for a role I thought he did pretty well in. In 2022, Tony passed away. Immediately, people brought up his Sopranos role, but I just thought of Vinny. It's silly to say, but the Vinny role means a lot to me. Oddly timed enough, this episode came out a week after my dog passed away. A lot of the emotions Stewie was going through, I was going through. I know, it's silly to say that I relate to something from Family Guy, right? The most memed on show of all time. But honestly, Vinny's role here is touching. For most of us, we've experienced the loss of a pet. It is so tragic and complicated. It's losing someone from your family. For Vinny, although he was very brief, I do think he has a significant role in the grand history of Family Guy. One of those rare occasions where modern Family Guy was actually able to provide a story with heart. Now, I'm not saying I want Vinny to come back. In fact, he actually appeared in a cameo as some quick cutaway gag. What I'm saying is, he shouldn't be left forgotten, but more of a mention of remember that one time the Griffins had another dog. Subscribe, I'll see you later.